Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. I should just probably stress at the beginning of the evening that we're not allowing any laughter tonight. This is going to be a very sober sort of, we're going to take apart the anatomy of Canadian humor and thereby kill it. That's what we're going to try and do. I don't think that that's going to happen. I just want to say before I specifically introduce Rick Mercer, I just want to say generally that the remarkable opportunity we have tonight is to actually spend some time with two gentlemen who are, not only the, at the top of their respective fields, but those fields have formidable histories. When it comes to, political cartooning in Canada, when it comes to Canadian political satire on television and radio, those are two areas in which Canadians have demonstrated themselves to be sort of especially adept at, and these two gentlemen have taken both of those professions up another number of levels. So this is going to be a really interesting evening. I guess, the one thing that strikes me when it comes to introducing Rick Mercer is, of course, trying to imagine a time when he wasn't with us. And when, in fact, when you think about it, that really wasn't all that long ago. But in those years, since Rick has appeared on television, since he has contributed his rants to his books, and so as an author as well. He has basically taken Canadian television comedy in directions which probably make a lot of us grateful that we are not rich or powerful. And over in programs like, of course, this hour has 22 minutes, the Monday Night Report, the Mercer Report, Made in Canada. The other thing that Rick has done is he has proven that there is no such thing as a dull Canada. It only gets dull if you don't get angry at it. And as long as you remain upset at this country, and especially at what this country, occasionally what its potential is and what it's not realizing because of our elected officials, then there is plenty to rant about. Please join me in offering a warm welcome to Rick Mercer.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff, and I want to thank the good folks at the Toronto Public Library for inviting me here this evening. I'm remiss, I've lived in Toronto for 10 years now. It doesn't seem like that, but I'm embarrassed to say, it's only recently that I've familiarized myself with the Toronto Public Library. I was here not that long ago, and it's such an eye-opener. Like, I spent a lot of time in libraries when I was a kid, and there was no bar. A library with a bar, that's perfect. But every day after school, I grew up outside of St. John's, and so it was like about a 20 or 30-minute drive. I would leave school, and instead of taking the bus, I would go to the library, and I'd just hang out at the library for hours until Dad would pick me up after work. And I remember Dad used to, he'd always say, "You're spending too much time at the library." And he said, "You'll get old book lung." But this facility is so clean and nice, and with a bar, I don't think there's any chance of that, so I'll certainly be coming back. My book is called A Nation Worth Ranting About. My name is Rick, and I am a rantaholic. Self-diagnosed off the internet, by the way, which is never a good thing to do, diagnose yourself off the internet. The first time I did it, I ended up with ADHD and hysterical scoliosis of the spine. Turns out I just lie funny and change channels a lot, but it is a real thing, rantaholic. I found it on the internet, and some of you may not be familiar with this term, but you might be thinking, you know what, maybe I'm a rantaholic, or maybe I'm married to a rantaholic, or maybe I want to be a rantaholic. And if you're curious, there's a simple test. It's just like AA. You just go through the questions, and depending on how you answer, then you get your diagnosis. There's 4. I'm gonna just administer the test now so you can self-diagnose, okay? Question 1. Have you ranted today? Well, of course you had. Rob Ford is the mayor. Of course you had. Question 2. This is important. Do you rant about the same thing over and over again? Now, see, that's a trick question. That doesn't apply to me. Sometimes I rant about what the government's doing wrong. Other times I rant what's wrong with the government. It's two entirely different things. Question 3. Would you call yourself a social or chronic ranter? See, this is how it starts. I remember with me, I'd get together with my friends on Friday afternoon, have a few rants. Then eventually it was every day after work, you're having a few rants. And then before you know it, you're ranting at home alone every day, often in front of the television. Question 4, and this is the most important one. Does your ranting hurt the people you are ranting about? I can only hope and pray. Inside my book is all the rants, because I don't stop ranting whether I'm on the TV show or not, all the rants that I've done over the last number of years. And there's also some essays about some of the rants that have gone viral. They take on a life of their own, which is something that's relatively new. There was one about bullying that went viral. Jamie Hubley, a young man in Ottawa who took his own life, and I ranted about that, and it suddenly took on a life of its own. There was a rant I did about voting, which I thought was just going to fall on deaf ears, but actually went viral, and then it led me to get credit for something that I didn't deserve credit for, which was the vote mobs. And I talk about those things, but I also talk about some of the people that I've had on the show over the years, because lately I've spent less time talking to politicians and more time just talking to regular folks around the country. Quite frankly, I find it more interesting talking to a lobster fisherman than the Prime Minister of Canada. Or a lobster fisherman and a cabinet minister. I mean, at least a lobster fisherman can voice his opinion on some subjects, whereas a cabinet minister can't. So quite frankly, I got bored talking with them. But I write extensively about one interview that I was very fortunate enough to do, and it was probably the most nervous I've ever been doing an interview or heading into an interview, and that was with Rick Hansen, the man in motion. And the reason why I was so nervous was, quite frankly, Rick Hansen has always been a hero of mine. He was a childhood hero of mine and someone that I always admired greatly throughout my entire adult life. And in fact, every time, you know, any prime minister would appoint anyone to the Senate, you know, I would be the guy going, what the hell is Mike Duffy doing in the Senate and Rick Hansen isn't? You know, he was always my go-to guy, and I just admired him so much, but I never had him on the show. And in fact, I didn't want to have anything to do with him, because if you work in the media and you're privileged enough to get to meet a lot of different people, you might start meeting people that you admire, and sometimes that can be a dog's breakfast. It can be very disappointing. You know, it's no different than when you go up to someone and say, oh, you know what, I just want to, sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say I loved your first record. It meant a lot to me at a very difficult time. You're a hero to me. And they go, yeah, whatever. And they're like throwing a drink at the waiter or something. You know, it can just be very disappointing. So I never even contemplated having Rick on the show. But it was the 25th anniversary of The Man in Motion. And it just kind of came up in the office a few times where people said, you know, you always say what a great Canadian Rick Hansen is, and you say you like to talk to great Canadians. Like, talk to Rick Hansen. And I just didn't know what to do. And then finally the pressure was there. I said, okay, I'll call him up. And so I got his number and I called him up and I said, hello, Rick Hansen, it's Rick Mercer calling, and it's the 25th anniversary of the Man in Motion tour, and I was thinking maybe you'd like to come on the show. And he said, well, yeah, and 5 years ago was the 20th anniversary of the Man in Motion tour. You know, what took you so long, basically, which I was incredibly flattered about. And I said, well, like, this will be great. Okay, I'll come out to BC and we'll do a shoot. And it had to be in BC because he's a great Canadian. But when I think Hansen, I think BC. And he said, okay. He said, I know exactly what we can do. And I was like, excellent, because I always love it when someone, you know, the person being interviewed brings something to it. And he said, we'll go sturgeon fishing. And I said, really? And then it turns out he's incredibly passionate about sturgeon fishing. Like, if he didn't have his accident and he didn't become the Man in Motion, he would be a world-famous sturgeon fisherman, if there's such a thing. But anyway, he loves sturgeon fishing. He said, we'll go sturgeon fishing. It'll be great. I got a boat. You'll come out here. We'll go out. We'll catch sturgeon. It'll be awesome. And I said, okay, great. We'll be out, like, you know, we'll work out the details, but I'll be there like Sunday, Monday or something. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. So I went into my executive producer, Gerald, and I said, great news, Hansen's in. We got Hansen this week. And he was like, excellent. And I said, and we're going, great news, we're going sturgeon fishing. And he said, why is that excellent? And I said, it's because it's his passion. He's a great Canadian. This is what he's passionate about. And he said, do you know anything about sturgeon fishing? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, look up boring in Google and sturgeon fishing comes up. He said, it's the worst fishing ever. And so I went and I Googled, and sure enough, I mean, sorry if there's any sturgeon fishermen here. I mean, but it's dreadfully boring, and you might catch a fish and it comes up and it's like prehistoric. I think its head pops off on the way up or something. They basically come up dead, right? And so I said, I looked and I was like, right, I could see this. We'd be on a boat and like Hansen be in his chair. I'd be sitting on a box. We'd have these rods. There'd be no fish, and then maybe we'd get one that comes up dead. It just wasn't good TV, right? And the last time I went fishing on TV was Bob Ray, and I had to get naked because I didn't want a repeat of that. And so I said to Joe, well, what do I say? Like, he said he wants to go sturgeon fishing. And he said, well, call him up and tell him something. Tell him you want to go bungee jumping. And so I called him up and I said, Rick, geez, wouldn't you know it? We already booked sturgeon fishing with a sturgeon fishing champion or something, and he's got his heart set on it. So I thought, you know, you can do other things. So I thought you and I could go bungee jumping. And at this point, I didn't even know if a dude in a wheelchair could go bungee jumping. I mean, I know I'm supposed to look smart, but really, I had no idea. And he said, I'll have to get back to you. And I've been doing this long enough to know what that means. It means it's not happening, right? And I said, well, why? Why do you got to get back to me? And he said, well, I'll have to check with my doctor. And I said, well, did you check with your doctor before you got in your wheelchair and went over the Great Wall of China and went down like 4-lane freeways in traffic and stuff like that? And he said, no, good point, but I'll get back to you. And I knew from the tone it was done. And what I didn't know, which his loved ones, his friends and very close family know, but I didn't know at the time, and if you're ever talking to him, like, by all means say hello, but don't mention this part, he's terrified of heights. He's just one of those people. He's terrified of heights. I didn't know that, right? So really, there wasn't a hope in hell Hansen was ever going to go bungee jumping, because it's stupid anyway, but people who are afraid of heights, they don't do that. So I was just sitting by the phone waiting, and then that night in Vancouver, as luck would have it, an old high school buddy of Rick's popped in on him and had a few beers, and they were out in the back having a few pops, and they were chatting, and this is like an old buddy, like they go way back from when they were like 13, 14 years old, and they were close friends. This guy even went on part of the Man in Motion tour with them, so like they were tight, and they hadn't seen each other in years, and they were catching up, and Hansen said, oh, you know, it's the 25th anniversary, I'm going to go on Mercer's show, and the guy was like, wow, great, and he said, we're going sturgeon fishing, and the guy's like, that's great, and he said, yeah, he wanted me to go bungee jumping, and the guy said, well, you can't do that, you're in a wheelchair. I mean, think, there's Rick Hansen, his entire raison d'etre of his entire life is proving that he can do anything that an able-bodied person could do, and there's his buddy going, you can't do that, you're in a wheelchair. So Hansen wheeled out into the kitchen, and he called me up and said, okay, I'm in. So 2 days later, I'm outside of Whistler, British Columbia, right? We're at this bungee jumping joint we found online, right? And I'm freaking out because I'm about to meet my childhood hero. And I don't care about meeting a prime minister. Like, I'm freaking about meeting Rick Hansen. And I wanted to be early, so we were there in this parking lot, and there was a long dirt road, and then there was the first left up to where I was, and that's where we were supposed to meet, and I was there like 15 minutes early, and I'm waiting for him, like, this is it, what am I going to say to Rick Hansen? And then I see off in the distance, this SUV is pulling up, and I'm like, okay, here he comes, it's Rick Hansen, and I'm watching him pull up, and then he takes the wrong turn, and he goes right, and down to this other parking lot that I didn't even know existed, which was like 100 feet down that way, right? So like I'm up here and he's down there, and I'm like, shit, like he's pulled up, and now he's gonna think I'm not here, and like it's disrespectful. I should be here, it's my show, I should be there to, you know, to greet him, and oh my God, and then I see him, I was like, it's him, how do I get down there? And then like, the door opens, and what do you think the most surprising thing about seeing the Man in Motion, Rick Hansen, in person? He can walk. I shit you not, he opened the door of the cab and stood out like this. And I'm up there looking, going, what the? I mean, this is, and then part of me, I'm like, I'm watching him, he's there, and he's standing next to his SUV, and like part of me, like the bad part of my brain, the part of my brain that like admires con men and bank robbers are going like, that's a good scam he has got on the go. That's what you call the long con there, right? And then I'm looking at him, and then I'm thinking, wait, he's only doing that because he doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't know I can see him. If he looks up and sees me looking at him standing, then I'm in for it, because next thing you know, I'll be in the middle of a Robert Ludlum novel. I'll be like, I'm being chased around Canada by assassins from the Rick Hansen Foundation who are committed to ensuring that the secret dies with me. And then he looks up at me and he goes, hey, Rick, how are you? And I'm like, hello, down there standing. And then so I get in the car and I drive down and I pull up next to him, and literally after practicing for days, the first thing I say to him is like, holy shit, you can walk? I did not know this, but it turns out, of course, he can't walk, but he just got these new exoskeleton bionic brace things on his legs, see? And he was liking them because you could put them on the legs and he could open the car door and he could get out, right? And then he could move along the back of the car and then pop the back of the SUV and pull the wheelchair out. And so he did that, and then he got in the wheelchair and he was sitting down. I was like, okay, everything's back to normal. Stop freaking out. And then we rolled out to where the bungee jump was, right? And like, sometimes, I mean, I'm very blessed. I get to travel all over Canada. It's all beautiful. I'm constantly amazed. But sometimes British Columbia is like gobsmackingly beautiful, you know, in that way where it just doesn't even seem real to you. It's like a James Cameron movie or something, you know, and I had that experience. I went out on the bridge and there was like, you know, there's like 200-300 feet pine trees soaring above my head, and I come from a place where, you know, trees get that tall, and you know, there's this raging glacial river down below, and there's eagles circling, and it's like there's a salmon jumping. I'm like, oh my God, this is like so beautiful. And I said, Rick, isn't this beautiful? And I looked, and he had this look in his eye, and he wasn't looking up, down, anywhere. He was just looking straight ahead, right? And I knew the look. Then I knew what we were in for, because it was the look. My brother is terrified of heights, right? And it was the look that my brother would get when we would make him change light bulbs on the stepladder for fun. Before we knew that was child abuse. And so I said, Rick, isn't this beautiful? And I thought, okay, he's freaking out here. I gotta move this along. So I said, Rick, this is Jim. Jim runs the bungee jump operation, and he says he knows exactly what he's going to do. And then Jim goes, hey. And I said, Jim says he's done this with people in wheelchairs before. And then Jim goes, hey. And I'm like, oh God, here we go, right? And then I'm thinking, I don't know who these guys are, right? And then, so the guy comes on and goes, listen, Mr. Hansen, this is going to be easy, okay? What we're going to do is, like, the bungee is going to be strapped to the chair, not you. And so we're just going to attach it here and here and here. We're going to show you, we're not going to push you off yet, but we're just going to lift you up like 2 feet in the air, and you're going to see how it's going to work. And the wheelchair is going to be on a 45-degree angle. You're just going to be like a baby in a bonnet. It's going to be so cool. You're just going to hang there like that. It's going to be awesome, okay? So, and Hansen's got the look on his face, and he's attaching the things. He goes, okay, we're just going to hoist you up there, just going to hoist you up, and they hoist him up, and then boom, 180 degrees, completely upside down. And he's got a seatbelt on, which is good, because suddenly his head is like this far off the bridge, right? And then they turn him upside down, and Hansen says, like, 2 more inches, I would have been a quadriplegic. And then the guy says, do you think, to me, he looks at me and he goes, do you think I should put like an extra strap on that part of the wheelchair? I'm like, what are you asking me for? Ask the man in motion. He's the one in the wheelchair. And Rick's like, no, don't put it there. That's very unstable. So and eventually they hooked it up, and after 2 or 3 times, sure enough, 45-degree angle, 45-degree angle. And then I said, okay, what are we going to do? And I still thought he was going to bail. And then he said, okay, let's do this thing. And then we discovered there's a real problem. In order to bungee jump, you got to jump. Rick Hansen don't jump. That's just the way it is. Now, he can go fast, but he needs some room, right, to whip, you know, he can go, but he needs room. So, on that day, it was my great privilege. I got to throw Rick Hansen off a bridge. And luckily, you know, why he's so tremendous, like I say, sometimes it's difficult meeting a hero because, you know, they can, you know, not meet your expectations, but he absolutely surpassed my expectations, and he was such a kind and generous man. And the fact that he allowed me to throw him off that bridge was really tremendous. And he had every right in the world for everything that he had achieved so far to say, well, that's a great idea, but get some young guy to do it. I'm going fishing. But luckily, the man in motion doesn't stop moving. And you can read all about it in my new book. Thank you very much.